Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Growing Your Library's Role, Creating a Community Garden with Impact. I'm Sarah Ostman from ALA's Public Programs Office. We have a lot to cover in the next hour, so I'm going to jump in with a few quick announcements. Today's webinar is a presentation of ALA's Public Programs Office and programminglibrarian.org. Hopefully many of you are familiar with our website. We offer program ideas, grant information, and an online learning library full of webinars like this one that you can watch on demand. You can also share your own library programs on the website. For more information, you can visit programminglibrarian.org or email us at programminglibrarian@ala.org. And funding for today's presentation comes from ALA's Cultural Communities Fund. You can support CCF and help make programming like this possible with a donation. Learn more online at ala.org/CCF. And finally, a couple of technical notes about our virtual classroom. Only our presenter has microphone access for the webinar, but you are welcome to type your questions or comments in the chat box. We do plan to have some time for Q&A at the end, so feel free to type those questions in as we go, and we'll bring them up again later if they aren't answered during the course of the presentation. And if you have any technical issues, please send a private message to PPO admin. To do so, hover over the words PPO admin. You'll see that under hosts at the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and click Start Private Chat. Now I'd like to introduce our presenter. Our presenter is Diane Connery, Director of the Pottsboro Area Public Library in Texas, named the Best Small Library in America 2017 finalist by Library Journal. Diane was a corporate trainer and entrepreneur before moving to a rural community 8 years ago. On the verge of closing its doors, the library was saved by a group of dedicated volunteers who got involved and transformed it into a vibrant community gathering place it is today. Even though she doesn't have a green thumb in the garden, Diane enjoys planting seeds in the community. I first heard Diane speak about her library's community garden at the 2017 conference of the Association for Rural and Small Libraries. And I was really impressed to hear how this garden not only brought food to residents who needed it, who may have been located in a food desert, but really reinvigorated the whole community and led to a really remarkable change in how both residents and city leaders viewed the library. I think you're going to enjoy hearing her story. And I want to thank the Association for Rural and Small Libraries for letting me poach her presentation and share it with all of you today. And with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Diane.
Okay, thanks very much. All right, so I do have so much to talk about today, and I hope I can share just some little sparks of inspiration, just like I've gotten from so many other people. So I'm going to talk as fast as this little southerner can to get all the information in. I'm excited about sharing the community garden program we've been working on for the last 2 years now, and it has been successful in engaging the community in surprising ways, things that we never predicted. But I know all of us are different, and because our communities are so different, the specifics I have may not fit your situation, but I'm hoping you can take something away from it. So what I'm going to do today is talk about why we decided a garden was the right thing for us to do, the steps to getting it started, some of the programs and partnerships that have evolved, and also where we're headed from here. So to give you a little bit of paint a picture of Pottsboro. Pottsboro is a small town located about 90 minutes north of Dallas. It's on a huge lake, Lake Texoma. It's known for striper fishing. We're on the border with Oklahoma. Pottsboro has a very small tax base because there are so few businesses within city limits. And when you come here, it's a little bit like going back in time. There are two main population groups here. They're locals. The largest employer we have is the school district. Many of the locals' families have lived here for generations. They may work in lower paying jobs, hospitality, healthcare fields. But the other main group we have are weekenders and retirees. So a lot of people move to this area, they may get a weekend lake home first, and then at some point in time, they retire. And many of those people were professionals, and they're accustomed to the kinds of services that cities have. So that's what we look like now, but growth is coming. You may have heard of Frisco is a suburb north of Dallas, was one of the fastest growing cities in the U.S., and growth is coming up that road you see toward us. So we want to be ready, and we want to help the town be ready. So here's what we look like. It's actually, don't tell anybody I said this, but it's a pretty ugly little town. This is what we look like within city limits. The picture on the left is the main street that runs through town. Picture on the right is a few blocks off the main street in what they would call the original town, near the train tracks. That's the police department, court, city hall. They're all together in this sad little strip, and the roof on that building leaked so badly that the city has decided not to even patch it anymore. It's just putting good money after bad. They want to build a new municipal building, and until that happens, when it rains, there are buckets sitting around collecting the drips. The library is located between these two pictures, so walk 2 blocks in either direction, and there's where you are in those pictures. And I just wanted to mention our garden that I'm going to talk about is about sustainability, but another kind of sustainability is library funding. As the town goes, so goes the library, and so we knew it was important to align ourselves with the priorities of the city so that we'll get the funding that we need. So the little houses you see there on the left, that's directly across the street from the library. A number of people who live around the library don't have transportation. There's no public transportation. And I first became aware of the impact of this when we had a young family, 2 young kids who visited the library just about every day and would stay the entire time we were open. And they talked to me about they had no way to drive to a grocery store, so they had to do all their grocery shopping at the dollar store that they could walk to. And if you just think about kids 5, 7 years old and having to buy all your groceries there, there's no fresh produce. Kids would come to the library hungry after school, and because we felt so bad about it, we did provide snacks when we could, but we also, for us, decided that we didn't want that to be our responsibility every day. So we would talk to the parents about the importance of the kids having snacks after school, and a number of times we've seen what the parents would give to them would be big bags of marshmallows, I think just because they're inexpensive. So now the rest of the story. The house there on the right is an example of like one of the lake homes that's outside of city limits. They're beautiful multi-million-dollar homes outside of city limits, marinas filled with fabulous boats. And a lot of these people have been our generous donors who have kept us going through the years. They're users of the library, some of them, but actually even those who aren't users of the library have been some of our largest donors. But their taxes don't support the budget we have. But we wouldn't have been open without the many years of support they have given. So why create a garden? Back in 2015, Texas State Library funded training for us for a Harwood Institute training. And that training helps you look outwards, learn what matters to the community, and then you can look at how the library can improve its services and programs to support what the community wants. And that has really helped me make intentional choices and focus. So what we did, we had a series of community conversations, small groups of people, the locals, the retirees, a very diverse cross-section were brought together in a series of small meetings to talk about what mattered to them, what their aspirations for the community were. And we also, the town has an annual festival. We did short surveys at the town's festival. And the themes that emerged from those groups were really interesting to me. Everybody said they wanted to get to know other people outside of their usual circles, their little networks of people. And also people expressed the desire to create infrastructure that improved the appearance of the town, and wanted activities to do so that they didn't have to go to a larger town to find something to do. And a little background on the library. It was started by a group of people in 1987. People who believed every town should have a library. There was no city funding for it. It was completely staffed by volunteers. No funding other than grants and fundraisers like book sales and donations. So this park, James Thompson Park, 27-acre park, is about a quarter mile away from the library. It was built about 3 years ago, and the vast majority of the money came from the grants, but it still required a lot of man hours on the part of the city workers to get it all put together. And we have an incredible city manager who works very hard. He was regularly out there with a shovel in his hand, trying to meet the deadlines. I love that about a small town. But that also paints the picture of when you're visioning and doing some big planning for a city, there may not be enough city officials to make it all happen. So in the lower right, you see an aerial view. The little green oval there is where the garden is now located. So after that park was completed, almost no one was using it. And some people said they felt like they were too isolated if they went out there to walk by themselves. And the city was taking heat for having invested so much in this, something that was not being used. And so thinking strategically, we always want to be good partners with the city. So that's part of how the garden idea came to be. So to give you a little bit about the timeline, the library was founded in 1987. It was filled with donated books. It was not child-friendly. Very few people used it. So in 2011, it was on the verge of closing. And I was brand new in town at that point. I had no background in libraries, hadn't really planned to get involved. But I saw it as an opportunity. But my first question is, why bother to save it? I didn't really think it was worth saving. And what we realized, though, that as great as the donors and fundraisers had been, really our only hope would be to get city funding. That's the only way we felt like we would be able to be viable long-term, because you can't count on grants. So we became very intentional in our decision-making to prove to the city that they needed us. And so then if the library was going to close, we wanted people to be up in arms. So we started thinking about what the city cared about, and they care about essential services. They didn't have a lot of extra money for what they call quality of life. They're putting money into street repairs and repairing old water lines. But as we started doing some innovative things, we were hearing back from them that they were excited about the positive media coverage we were getting. we always like to do the unexpected. That gets people talking, gets us in the media, and that was something that they appreciated. So in 2012, they started us with $4,000 of funding. Then they added $5,000 a year until 2016 through a grant I'll tell you about. We launched a health literacy grant in the garden. And then 2017, the city funded us at $26,000. And please think back to those pictures you saw. For a town our size to commit that amount of money is a huge investment. And so we're currently working on a placemaking grant, which is an extension of the community garden. We were named a finalist for Best Small Library. And the city manager has told us now that they're going to commit to fully funding an operating cost of $60,000 next year so that we can be open more hours. And also in that new city hall they want to build, they want the library to be included in that building. So we have come a long way. We're just thrilled about the developments. So when we were preparing the garden, we just felt like, especially, you know how grant writing is, you have to start with that plan, know what your goal is, but then we also think it's important to be light on your feet, kind of go with the flow. We've had people pop up who we had never thought about what their talents and interests might be. And so we just kind of go with things, and we live in the yes. We don't do a lot of saying no. Everything's an experiment. So the grant from the Texas State Library, almost $50,000. And then since then we've got 2 additional grants specifically for the garden. Texas Department of Agriculture allowed us to build a rainwater harvesting pavilion, and then a local foundation, we put a fence around the garden, a chain link fence. And through grant writing training, I've learned that we're helping the funders meet the goal. They really need us. They've got legal requirements to give away their money with their partner. They can't reach their goals without us, and we can't do it without them. And there's a lot of money out there for community gardens because it addresses so many kind of crossover issues, food insecurity, health issues. So there are funding sources out there if you look around. So how did we do it here? I think is our secret weapon was the person we hired to be the garden manager. We hired a person who had whole networks of people we had never engaged with successfully. She's a mom, just had her 7th child, and I have definitely learned that the busiest people get the most accomplished. She's got this group of self-described crunchy moms who have gotten involved with the programs, and we have seen a really nice follow through of people who come in at the garden level but then start attending our library programs, the more traditional parent-child workshops, that kind of thing. We've also had college students who wanted to spend time doing something meaningful. Entrepreneurs, I'll touch on that, farm sellers, that kind of thing, and people who are just drawn to connect with natural things rather than just being consumers. And we've also had people tell us, and this goes with what the Harwood conversations told us, that people want to be part of something bigger than themselves. So we don't want recruits, we want volunteers. So there's so much variety in this garden. We have a place for people to find what they're passionate about and work on doing something they love. So I'd like to just give you an overview of the basics. It's a permaculture garden, which, yes, that means it's organic, but it's even bigger than that. It's how systems work together. how animals and insects, how we plant according to the topography of the ground, and then also how people work with it. So it's just how you work with nature to grow things successfully. There's no charge for anything. It's free seeds, water, compost. By the way, the city is providing the water for us. Compost, mulch, the use of tools, garden education. There are 100 individual beds. Most of those, I think probably 80, are at ground level, but we also have standing beds, which I'll show you pictures, for people who have difficulty bending. People agree to our guidelines. It's first come, first served to sign up each season. They're quarterly garden classes, and when the weather doesn't permit, we do them here at the library, which makes a really nice marriage that we have this physical space that we can use when needed. There are monthly garden work days, monthly children's nature classes. We've also started a seed library here, and it works well for the library to be this physical location so we can distribute the seeds, collect their applications, and that kind of thing. So one of our strategic decisions was to honor the family who had donated the land to the city, that 27 acres for the park. We named the garden, kind of the subtitle for the garden is after a woman who had lived and gardened on that land for 70 years. And those ancestors are spread out all over the U.S. We've made sure that they're informed of how we're honoring their grandmother. And they have really expressed appreciation for the attention we're getting. And one of the local grandsons who still lives in the area is quite generous to area organizations. So we're building our relationship with him. He still owns land that adjoins the park that he's hoping to develop. And of course, for him, having this vibrant park in the middle of a development will make his homes more attractive. And also having this historical tie-in opens up some additional funding sources for us. So that's our little bulletin board we have in the garden shed. Shows companion planting, one of our flyers, the bio of Vesper, Alexander, Bryant, and planting season information. So we can post notes there that the gardeners see when they come. So, related programs and partnerships. So many things have come out of this, and who knows where we're going from here. So here's a picture. You see, that was actually one of the very first days we were laying the garden out. And this picture shows a whole new demographic for us. Most of these are students from Austin College. It's a great liberal arts school about 30 minutes away. The school has a community outreach initiative, and so they really put a premium on getting their students out into the community, experiencing real world things and networking. They also have a grant writing program that they pay their students for the summer to work in area nonprofits to write grants. So every year they give us this very professional 2-day training in grant writing. One of the students from the college and then a representative from the library, and then they pay the student to work and write grants for us all summer. So just as incredible as you can get. So it also helped to have young people for manual labor. And the brand new college president came out, gosh, this has been about 2-3 months ago now, first week in town to participate with one of our busy bee days. And I just received the alumni magazine for the school. That picture and story was sent out in the annual magazine that goes out nationwide. And also when I went yesterday on their website, our community garden is on the front page of Austin College website. It's also on their grant writing. So their grant writing page, I think they like us. So seed picking party. We begin each of the planting seasons with a seed picking party, and we received donations from organic seed suppliers, just all over, probably 5 or 6 different, and I mean boxes and boxes of these organic seeds. It should last for years. In most cases, they just ask us to pay for shipping. They have regulations about how long they're allowed to sell the seeds in case of decreased germination rates. And so they're happy to give them away. And by the way, we've a great marriage of technology in gardening. We recently, with our 3D printer, printed a little seed starter planter. And so we're checking some of the old seeds for viability, and that's in the library that people come in and see. Right now we're doing some tomatoes. So as soon as those tomatoes get ready to transplant, we'll put them out into our edible landscaping. So Seedlings, local wholesale nursery, when they have extra plants, they've been very generous about donating seedlings to us. We cross promote on social media whenever possible. We do it with them. And just as an extra little nicety, when they come in, which isn't often, we let them use our fax machine for free, just to say thank you. So this was our first planting. I mentioned it's a permaculture garden. So here are some of the ground level beds. There's no tilling involved with permaculture. It's lasagna layering. You're layering cardboard to prevent weeds from popping up, and then layering soil and compost and mulch. And that gives you a view for how extensive it is before our fence went up. So we started with twice monthly Busy Bees, Saturday mornings and Sunday afternoons. And gardeners are expected to come to one of the Busy Bees each month. Each Busy Bee has a theme. This one, it looks like the cattle panels you see there. They were putting in the first charity bed on that day. So the Busy Bees, a change we've made just recently is tweaking our promotion of the Busy Bees. We didn't want people in the community who didn't have individual beds to be excluded. So now we're really presenting it as these are educational classes available to everybody, open to the public, and the gardeners know they are obligated to come one of those days. But for the public, they just see it as they're coming to a class. And of course, we hope we lure them into our web and they come and stay and help and maybe then even apply for their own bed after they see what it's about. Each month is a different theme. Let's see, this month we were building the food forest. We've got fruit trees in there. We've done herb spirals, vertical planting, wicking beds. And Sarah mentioned I'm not a gardener, so all of this is new to me, but I am learning. And so we've got a lot of demonstration beds built around the garden. One little section is frogscaping. If you look closely, you can see there's a frog sitting on that solar pump there that keeps the water circulating. And then we have some toad houses in the area, and we do see them, and that's a sign of a good, healthy environment. Here's the working on a charity bed. WIC has been promoting our activities. I noticed them sharing something on their social media today. There's a food bank where they give out fresh produce. We set up there when they're doing that, and invite people, inform people about the garden, invite them to get a bed with us. And then we currently have 2 charity beds, and we also donate fresh produce to local shelters. There it is in bloom. So pollinator bed, right now it's a fairly small space, but within the next 3 weeks we're going to be greatly enlarging it. There are 4 bat houses we have, and we're planning a butterfly festival on September 1st, which will be the first of its kind in this area. So a lot of butterfly pollinator education happening with that, so we're excited. Here's one of the demonstration gardens, Hugelkultur Mound, and you do have this in your resources, what Hugelkultur is. It's a drought-tolerant method of planting. You dig down and put some logs in there, and so as they degrade, they're providing nutrients for the seeds that you plant on top. And so Busy Bee, that was them just getting it started. And just, I guess I picked this picture because there you see a mom with a baby on your hip. And that's not the kind of patron we used to have at the library. So we're loving it. Art in the garden is just to beautify it, and it actually goes with the theme well. Outdoor sculptures. We have a lot of artists in this area, so we're lucky in that way. So a variety of sculptures out in the garden. After it was going, and when we were first going to kind of do a ribbon cutting big launch to the public, we called it a spring fling, invited local farmers to sell their things, and other small businesses. A local guy who makes pickles was there, and some local artists selling their gourd art, which goes well with the natural theme. So I really think a key to all of this has been the relationship building we've done. It's supporting each other and getting people excited about working on a big project. This was, I thought, so cool. For that ribbon cutting I mentioned, when the gallery owner in a nearby town, not our town, found out about the outdoor art being added to the garden, she offered to host a reception the night before the ribbon cutting to the public. We cross-promoted the event. She had a guitar player, these incredible refreshments. If you can see what that is, it's a dress form that was the centerpiece of the reception, and she designed clothes for it with empty seed packets. So most of the people who came to that event may not have even been from Pottsboro, didn't have particularly anything to do with the garden or the library, but they're art enthusiasts who had no connection with the garden. And so building that relationship with the gallery owner has resulted in me requesting grant funds to commission her for public arts, 2 different grants. And then in turn, she's been providing gifts of art to the library also. Right now, she's making some loose parts out of wood pieces for the kids to play with that look like things from nature. And at that reception, a local award-winning baker created these painted cookies for us, Pottsboro Community Garden cookies. And actually this Saturday, she'll be teaching a cookie decorating class for us for free here at the library. So we've made such good friends, people I would have never met. Ranger Kate is one of my faves. There's a state park nearby, and Ranger Kate comes from that park. She alternates monthly children's nature classes with a biologist from a nearby National Wildlife Refuge. They've done things like releasing ladybugs in the garden, butterflies. They've had classes about snakes, differences between frogs and toads. And I hadn't thought about it, but they have to track their numbers too, their outreach numbers. So they loved partnering with us, and they even bring all their own supplies. So that's been super. Ranger Kate helped us with a fishing tournament in the park also. So Smores at sunsets. There's also, I don't think I mentioned this, we have a monthly just social gathering for the gardeners, because in permaculture, people connecting with other people is a component of it. So S'mores at sunset in the park there's a big turnout for that one. With people connecting, many of the gardeners help each other out. They're sharing watering duties with each other, which in Texas, that's important in the summer because sometimes you do have to water frequently. So sometimes it's been, if somebody's going on vacation, they'll ask their neighboring bed owners to water for them. Some actually have a group of 5 or 6 families just at the beginning of the summer have set up a schedule for water rotation duties, which has been really cool. There's a food box in the garden itself where if you have grown far too many squash, you can put them in there, and somebody else may have way too many tomatoes. So people just share when they have an abundance of what they grew. We're also working on fence art now that we have a fence around it to make the chain link look more welcoming. We don't want it to be seen as a barrier. And some of those local artists I mentioned are now working on it'll be a competition in April, and they're installing different kinds of art on the fence. For instance, it's like giant cross stitching. I'm excited about that. Another unexpected partnership, a food truck in town. I asked him if what he did with his old coffee grounds. He's just a coffee truck, and he saves up his coffee grounds, and then I run by and pick them up. I always buy coffee, and again, cross-promoting on social media. And he gets rid of his coffee grounds, and we add them to our compost to enhance that. Wildflower painting. 4th of July morning, which I would have never dreamed of, but remember it's a lake community, so that's a big holiday here. We found a way to provide an activity in the morning before fireworks that evening, and we had about 60 people came out to do this wildflower painting. So the garden manager had just picked from her property a bunch of wildflowers, and then the kids, actually, and some adults, and they really were good, would dip their wildflowers into paint and then make these paintings that looked like fireworks. Of course, we have books and materials that support the kind of education that we're providing, both gardening and cooking. This one is a great one, Good and Cheap. You've got this in your resources. You can actually download this book for free on the website, and it's How to Eat Well on $4 a Day, which would be a SNAP budget. We do cooking demonstrations, cooking classes. We do circulate some cooking equipment like canning supplies, a dehydrator. I remember before all of this started, seeing a mom at the grocery store, and her cart was filled just with, to be judgmental, a lot of junk food, a lot of processed food, generic pizza rolls, Pop-Tarts, that kind of thing. And so we want to offer people instruction on how they can eat more nutritiously on a budget. We've done classes with things like cooking with dried beans, canning, Thanksgiving side dishes, snacks for kids, things that they would like to eat. And so that's been very successful. Earthen Building, I knew nothing about it, but come to find out this goes on all over the world. This is called cob. You see they're stomping clay into hay, And it's all, I guess it's similar to Adobe. There are different kinds of earthen building. So we have clay and sand and hay. You stomp it all together to make this mixture. And what they're doing in this picture is they've got hay bales that they coat with the cob, and then those have become quite sturdy benches out in the community garden. And one of the projects coming up I'm excited about is building a pizza oven. And just yesterday, I saw one of the gardeners post on our Community Garden Facebook page that their family's building a straw bale roundhouse, which is a different kind of earthen building. And she's also completing an earth bag tornado shelter, and was just inviting other community gardens to come over and to her place and help them. So people are taking the information we give them, and then they're going beyond what we give them. So bottle bricks, this is a big scout project we had. People collecting water bottles, individual, single-use water bottles, and you stuff them with trash that can't be recycled. Get it as full as possible. Like the bottles actually need to be hard when you complete them, when you finish them and cap them off. And the Girl Scouts have made a bottle brick bench in the park for us. And then coming up, we'll make a bottle brick bench, and then in the center of that will be a cob pizza oven. So on those social gatherings, we can go out in the evenings, look at the incredible sky, and grill some pizzas with fresh vegetables from the garden. I mentioned earlier the Rainwater Harvesting grant we got. You can see there's the water container. I think it's 300 gallons. So it's a pavilion with gutters that feed into that. And so we use that collected rainwater whenever possible. So we decrease the city's water bills. And then it's also a demonstration for how people can do this at home. And that's becoming a bigger issue, probably nationwide, the importance of conserving water. So I mentioned earlier the Austin College annual report. This was another busy bee where a bunch of the students came out. So some of them have come on busy bees. We've also had the college students continuing just on their own. So they may not even have beds there, but they come out to work in the charity beds. We planted edible landscaping around the garden. Remember those hungry kids coming after school? So sugar snap peas, things that they can pick and eat. Local pizza restaurant comes and they pick basil and peppers and I think rosemary's, and they've made library pizzas and then promote it on their social media. There's a wonderful TED Talk by Pam Warhurst about edible landscaping, and this is going to be spreading all over our town now, edible landscaping. We've had Eagle Scout projects. This Keyhole garden, you put your food scraps down in that little metal circle in the middle of it, and it's very drought tolerant. We could not keep up with all the arugula and spinach it was producing last spring. And then a local artist or friend of the Eagle Scout painted those books for us, decorative books on there, which I just thought were awesome. So nature play, we found the kids of the gardeners needed a place to play while the parents are gardening. So we put in some log balance beams, various things to keep the kids busy. We've installed a mud kitchen, and this little area is actually fenced off within the community garden. You can see the old-fashioned water pump in that picture on the right. There's actually a rainwater harvesting collection barrel on the other side of that mud kitchen, and it feeds the water into that pump, and then the kids pump their own water to play with in the mud kitchen. So you've probably seen an emerging trend now is the importance of playing outside in the dirt, importance of nature play. One of the success stories that's most meaningful to me, a mother who lives in public housing near us. In our town, if you have certain kinds of fines, you don't have the money to pay them, you can work them off with doing community service. And this particular mother was arrested for drunk driving with her infant in the car. So she started doing community service in the garden for us to work off her 300 hours. And she got her own beds over time. She was doing so well that she asked for an exception to the 3-bed maximum. And I think she now has 5 beds. She credits the garden with her losing over 100 pounds in a little over a year. And what I have observed is she's now attending the library programs like parent-child workshops. She's interacting with other parents. She sees some of those moms modeling more positive behaviors, things, people and things she wouldn't have interacted with before. So, of course, we're always working on where we go from here. So a lot of possibilities. And next month, we'll be launching our Library of Things so we can circulate tools to the community, among other things that people use just once in a while. A fairy trail is in the works. Scouts are collecting natural materials, and people will be invited to come to a class how to build fairy houses, and then the community can write stories about which fairies live in which house, and then we'll make those available to the public. So next grant we're working on with Austin College is their Center for Environmental Studies has done a lot of work on water conservation, and so we'll be working with them on a citywide project to do native planting and prairie restoration. And that money that the city saves and not having to mow and plant, I'm hoping will come to the library budget. The city's undergoing strategic planning, and what we've realized with that is natural resources are our biggest strength. And so the town recognizes the need for a plan for structured growth and also establishing a new identity for the town. I'm on the steering committee for that visioning committee, as long also another board member is. And I really think it's the movement we started with the garden that is leading to a whole new identity for the town. We made a great commercial, speaks to the connection between the library and the garden. It highlights our role in the community and just how we made a difference in people's lives. A local water up with color artist painted that. It was made into a time-lapse video. We had a reception at the library where we unveiled the painting and then played the commercial before it aired. And Colleen, I think you have a way that you can play that commercial. Can you do that?
A library is like a garden. They nurture growth in their communities, inspire curiosity and creativity wherever they flourish. If we invest in these places, they will teach us life's simple lessons, to nurture others, to learn more, and to find hope in the future. Great things are created in these spaces. After all, that's how we all began, isn't it? With a hope, a dream, and a tiny seed.
Okay, and that's what I've got.
Thank you so much, Diane. I love that video. Makes me so happy every time I see it. We've had a few questions already in the chat box, so I'm going to launch in and start asking those. If anyone else has questions, please enter them into the chat box now. We have about 7 minutes left for Q&A. So the first question, I'm actually going to combine two of the questions asked by Cassandra and Carol. They asked, is your garden work in addition to your regular library position? And about how many staff hours go toward the garden and programming?
The garden manager gets 20 hours a week devoted to working in the garden. And it is, for me, an additional project. I am learning to delegate, but I would say it probably averages 3 hours a week for me to manage what's going on.
And what about that garden manager? Can you talk a little more about her position?
Yes, that was funded through the Texas State Library grant. So she basically, that's her baby. I mean, I'm here for backup if, she needs, and I do the grant reporting, but she manages the people, gathered the guidelines, coordinates all the programs. So it's pretty much hands-off for me because I found just a genie. She's wonderful.
Great. Anika asked, is anyone on staff a master gardener or certified in food preparation and or preserving via your state extension program?
No, no one on staff is. We do have, there's a local community college that has a culinary school, so they were actually the resource for us for our canning classes and most of our cooking classes. And we also have connected with the AgriLife Extension, and they've provided some teachers as well.
And another question from Anika, she asked, was this the first community garden in recent history in your town?
Yes, absolutely. It's not something that's been done in our town before, and I think it's the only permaculture garden in our whole region.
Nice. I have a question from Amy. How do you keep a non-gardener from taking the vegetables?
That is a philosophical question that every garden needs to decide. We did put up a fence. In part, it was to keep some of the larger animals like deer out of the garden. But before the fence went up, we did have a little bit of an issue with people coming and taking things that didn't belong to them. And actually, we didn't know at the time. It's possible people didn't even realize that it wasn't for everyone to pick. I mean, they may have thought, oh, community garden, that means anybody comes and picks what they want. And personally, and I know some of the other gardeners felt like if somebody was hungry, I wouldn't have a problem with them picking what they needed. I think our real fear, which luckily never happened, was what if somebody just came and vandalized it? The thought of putting, all that work, and I'm just about ready to pick the perfect eggplant, and then it disappears or is destroyed. So we chose to put in a fence.
Launching off that, I'm going to ask my own question. Can you elaborate about some more challenges that you faced? This has all seemed very easy, and I suspect that there have been some bumps along the way.
Yes, I will confess, in Texas, fire ants are a problem we have not found an answer to. Also, it just being permaculture, a lot of people aren't familiar to that. It's a learning curve for them. So we've had people who wanted to use Miracle Grow or, pesticides, that kind of thing in the garden. So we have had to do a lot of education on that. Occasionally, people stop tending their beds, and the manager checks in with them, see if there's something temporary, or if they, decided it wasn't for them and they want to release their beds. Right now, we actually, for this season, have a waiting list for beds, so we really want to make sure that the people who have them are interested in using them.
And remind us, how many beds do you have?
We have 100 individual beds.
Wow. Okay, great. I see a couple people typing right now, so I want to give them just a minute in case those are questions coming in. If anyone has any final questions, we have just 2 minutes left. Here we go. How long is the garden manager position funded for, and will the city be taking over funding for that if and when the grant runs out?
It has been funded for 2 years, and we are requesting an additional year of funding for it. One of the things when we've looked at other gardens is some people have found with their gardens that it's actually more successful when you don't have a paid worker. We definitely wanted a paid position to get it started, but what I've seen some other gardens say is when there's a paid worker, some of the individuals don't feel the same urgency to take a leadership role within it, and so everybody thinks, oh, the paid manager will do it. So what we're hoping to do is work towards a point that there is no paid manager after this initial launch of it.
Does the garden manager also manage the seed library portion of the program, or how is that handled?
She got it set up, and then we organize it here. Oh, at the library, we just take care of, making sure it's stocked and checking out the seeds, that kind of thing.
Great. And final 2 questions from Katie. First, how much time do you give a person before they are contacted for not taking care of their bed? Is that a set time?
Yes, I think our guidelines say 3 weeks. So if the garden manager is out there often, so if she sees something that looks like it hasn't been touched in 3 weeks, she checks with them.
And do you know the dimensions of each of those individual beds?
Oh, I did at one time. I want to say they're about 6 feet long and maybe 2.5 feet wide.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Diane. We are just out of time. We really appreciate you talking about your community garden today, and thank you to everyone who joined us. This webinar was recorded, and if you're interested in watching it again or sharing it with your fellow library staff or anyone else, you can find it on the Programming Librarian site. It will be there within 24 hours. Just click on the link that says Learning. Thank you all.